Welcome back to the deep dive. We are jumping straight into a really dense set of sources today.
We are.
And they all focus on this single famous moment.
Yeah.
The story of 12-year-old Jesus in the temple from Luke's gospel.
Right, Luke 2.
And our mission really for this deep dive is to get past the Sunday school version of the story. We want to understand the complex world he was actually in, how he was balancing God's expectations with all the cultural rules and social duties of being human.
Exactly. What does it actually mean to walk in the rules appreciated by God and man?
Yeah, that's the core question.
And to even start tackling that, I think we have to begin with man's rules. Because human traditions, they're powerful, they build community, sure, but they can also create these incredibly complex, sometimes really unfair systems.
So let's unpack that conflict. The material we've got uses a fantastic modern analogy to really bring this out.
It does.
He talks about the traditions around the Lunar New Year, specifically this obligation of Jia,
the married daughter returning to her mother's home. It's the perfect example of how traditions can weigh on people in very unequal ways.
And in the Taiwanese culture our sources looked at, there's a really strict, almost fear-based superstition about when this can happen.
Yes. There's this belief that if a married daughter goes back home before the first day of the new year, she'll bring poverty or bad luck to her parents. The phrase is "Nyang Jia Hui Bin Kwang."
So you have this genuine desire a daughter has to honor her parents, but it's completely constrained by a cultural rule that makes her prioritize her husband's family first.
And that cost is so real. The source material tells this powerful story about a mother-in-law whose husband had 6 sisters. And because all 6 of those sisters had to come back to his family home and she had to host them, she never got to go back to her own parents' home for the new year, ever.
Wow.
And what's so fascinating there is the contradiction, right? That the husband's family is, of course, overjoyed to have their 6 daughters back, but their own wife, who is also a daughter, is completely trapped by the exact same system. So human rules can create this really imbalanced setup.
Okay, but isn't that a big leap? We're talking about a modern cultural tradition versus, first century Jewish law. How do the sources connect those two things?
The connection is the principle of obligation versus expectation. In both cases, a family has to pour time, resources, emotional energy into fulfilling these rules, often at a huge personal cost.
Okay.
So if modern human-made rules create that much tension, just imagine the pressure on Jesus to manage his earthly family and his divine obligations. And that, right there, brings us to Luke 2.
So let's go to the gospel itself. The details we get are pretty unique, and I think it starts with the narrator, Luke.
Exactly. Luke is often identified as a physician, or at least someone with a real interest in precision, in observation.
Right.
It's why his descriptions, like the details of the crucifixion or the geography of this journey, are so much more granular than what you might find in Matthew or Mark. He gives us the reality on the ground.
And the reality of this pilgrimage for Passover, or Pesach, was that it was not easy. Joseph and Mary lived in Nazareth, and they're going all the way to Jerusalem. Geographically, that's about 60 Roman miles, so almost 96 kilometers.
And this wasn't, a stroll down a paved Roman road. This was a hard, multi-day hike.
Uphill, right.
Uphill. The sources say it probably took them anywhere from 3 to 5 days of tough travel. Through wilderness, dealing with dust, exhaustion.
And the most remarkable thing about this is that they didn't even have to go.
Not at all.
The law said that only adult men living within, about 30 kilometers of Jerusalem were actually required to go every year.
Right. They were way, way outside that mandatory zone.
So the fact that they went every single year, that says a lot.
It says everything. Joseph is called a righteous man. This difficult annual journey shows a level of devotion that just went far beyond the typical custom. They weren't just checking a box.
They were showing their commitment through a real physical sacrifice. And that would have absolutely shaped their son's understanding of what faith looked like.
And that devotion had a ripple effect, didn't it? It went way beyond their little family.
It really did. The sources point out the huge social and political tension this pilgrimage caused.
Yeah.
Jerusalem was normally a city of maybe 50,000 people. But during Passover, with everyone coming in, the population could swell to 500,000.
10 times the normal size.
That must have been an absolute nightmare for the Roman occupiers.
A complete nightmare. Just imagine it. You've got 500,000 people all gathered for a festival celebrating
Deliverance from slavery.
Yes. Deliverance from slavery and overthrowing a tyrant Egypt. And this huge emotional crowd is being policed by maybe, 5,000 Roman soldiers? The tension would have been electric.
So it wasn't just a security risk. For the Romans, this was a potential uprising every single year.
It was a constant source of anxiety. The whole Roman political machine was geared towards keeping a lid on things during that one volatile week.
And this context, as the sources explain, is crucial for understanding why someone like Pilate would be so quick to
just make a problem go away. Agreeing to an execution, like with Jesus, was, from his perspective, a small price to pay to avoid a riot that could overwhelm his forces and spark a full-blown revolt.
Wow. That really reframes the whole political backdrop. It's a tinderbox of devotion and Roman paranoia. Let's zoom in on the main character here. 12-year-old Jesus. Why is that age so important to the story?
Luke is very, very deliberate about stating the age. At 12, a Jewish boy was considered of the law.
Which is like a transition to religious adulthood.
Exactly. It's when he became accountable for his own faith. Kind of like what later became formalized as a bar mitzvah. But it wasn't just some random age. It was the end point of years of really rigorous education.
Okay, so walk us through that again, because that educational system explains exactly why he was in the temple doing what he was doing.
It starts at home. From birth, really, with the parents teaching the law. Then, around age 5, formal education begins. Kids would start reciting the Torah.
But at that age, it was mostly about memory, right? Not really understanding it.
Precisely. It was about sharpening the memory, filling that internal library. Like a kid today reciting classic poems without fully getting the meaning yet.
So that's the data storage phase.
Yeah.
When does the critical thinking kick in?
That starts around age 10. Students would move on to learning the Mishnah, which is, the commentary and interpretation of the law.
Yeah.
But the really crucial shift, the age of responsibility, happens at 12.
And what changed at that point?
At 12, he was officially responsible for his own faith. He could read the law in public, and this is the most important part, he was now encouraged to ask questions of the teachers.
So he went from being a passive memorizer to an active participant. An active theologian, really.
Exactly. So that scene in the temple where he's listening to them and asking them questions.
That wasn't him showing off.
No, not at all. It was him doing exactly what was expected of a bright, dedicated student who had just hit this major milestone. He was fulfilling the highest cultural expectation.
And the sources gave that great example about the kind of questions they'd ask, like why it was forbidden to eat blood.
Yes, and the answer wasn't just because God said so. It was practical. The teacher might explain that from a health perspective, blood spoils incredibly quickly without refrigeration. So God's rule was connected to their daily survival.
That is just an invaluable context. So he was engaging in real critical theological inquiry.
He was.
And to really appreciate how careful Luke's reporting of this is, we kind of have to compare it to the other stories about Jesus that were going around back then.
Oh, absolutely. When you look at all the texts from that era, the material really breaks them into 3 piles. You've got the standard texts, the canon, the 66 books that were the accepted standard.
Okay, so that's pile 1. Then you have the second pile, the Apocrypha.
Right, which might have some good lessons, some ethical stories, but they weren't seen as being on the same level.
And then you have the third pile, which is, let's be honest, kind of dangerous.
The fabricated stories, the pseudepigrapha. These were texts claiming to be real accounts, but they were basically just made-up tales to, satisfy people's curiosity or add some sensationalism.
So what did these fake stories about Jesus actually look like?
I mean, they were often just wild, exaggerated myths. The most famous one that the sources mention is the story of young Jesus making birds out of clay.
Right, and he claps his hands.
And they magically fly away. It's spectacular, but it has zero theological or historical grounding.
And the sources give that really powerful modern analogy to show that this hunger for fake stories, for Wei Jing, is still a thing today.
It absolutely is. The story of the South Sea blood letter.
Tell us about that one.
It was this supposedly heartbreaking letter written in blood on a piece of clothing by dying Vietnamese refugees. And it was full of this, detailed, patriotic, literary language. It was incredibly compelling.
So why was it determined to be fake?
The logic was just. It was simple, but so compelling. A refugee fleeing communism, dying of exposure and starvation.
Right.
They just wouldn't have the physical ability or the focus to write a long, eloquent political article in their own blood. The story was great, but the reality made it impossible.
It's an exercise in critical thinking, isn't it? Separating a story that feels good from what is actually possible.
And this all just proves that people are still drawn to fabricated stories if they satisfy some emotional need. Luke's account, on the other hand, is so quiet. it so normal. It's a snapshot of real Jewish life.
Which raises the most important question of all. How did Joseph and Mary make sure Jesus was guided by that kind of genuine practice and not by stories of flying clay birds?
It comes back to their actions. It comes back to the power of the living example.
Exactly.
Their devotion wasn't just Yanjiao teaching with words. That's the easy part. It was Shengjiao teaching by living it. And that is so much harder.
They taught him the law by living it year after year on that incredibly difficult uphill journey to Jerusalem.
And let's remember, that journey was 3 to 5 days through the wilderness to get there, and another 3 to 5 to get back, all for a 7-day festival.
Wow.
By making that sacrifice every single year, they were embedding the deepest meaning of Passover into their son. It wasn't just another holiday.
It was a commitment to remembering God's salvation.
Yes, the cost of salvation. That's the lesson he learned, not from a scroll, but from their tired feet and their consistent sacrifice.
So what does this all mean for us? Joseph and Mary, they set Jesus up for this age of the law by giving him both the intellectual tools
through his education and learning to question,
and the spiritual foundation through their consistent, difficult living example. They fulfilled the rules of God by going above and beyond the expectations of man.
And our sources really drew a clear line about where you find genuine commitment. It's easy to be committed when things are fun, right? It's easy to celebrate a holiday.
But the real measure of piety is when it's difficult, like staying focused during Good Friday, or just getting up for an early service after a late night. The easy option, sleeping in, is always the most tempting.
And that's really the final thought for you to mull over. If genuine piety, like what Joseph and Mary modeled, is defined by sticking with it when it's hard,
like making a long uphill journey year after year,
then what commitment in your own life is the hardest to keep when cultural noise or just being tired offers you an easy way out? That's where the living example really counts.
We hope this deep dive into the rules, the rituals, and a 12-year-old's unique place in it all gives you plenty to think about. We'll see you next time.